we've also seen a lot of good writers. I mean, if they have a very successful first book or whatever, if they're writing many fictional books, but you also sort of have, you're sometimes compelled to engage in non-fiction as well. And as a category, I mean, I've seen a lot of good non-fiction coming out. Sometimes perhaps it surprises me even more than the fiction that has come out in Indian writing in English. And sometimes not only from, say, novelists or poets or short story writers, but from journalists who also sometimes tend to use some of the fictional techniques or these narrative devices that others would use to produce a very good non-fictional book. Yeah. So do you feel that pressure to also engage in non-fiction?
I mean, it can be an opportunity rather than a pressure. If there is a new form that has currency, that means many more readers are talking to you through that form. It can be an opportunity to talk to them. A popular magazine asked me to write a short story in 3 parts, and it was to be serialized over 3 months because that's how they do it and that's how they've always done it. And it made me engage with a kind of way of writing a short story in 3 parts. The first attempt was a fail and they rejected it. Then I tried again and threw in like some, I would say kind of like almost salacious sort of elements or some recognizable tropes that then allowed the story to pass muster. But of course, my interest was the readership that I normally would never have access to. So many people read that magazine. And also, I started getting interested in the form of what I was being asked to do. So I think when you are forced into a form, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. Form is always a good thing because it gives shape to your question. When you can choose a form or when a form chooses you, either way, there's a kind of a tension there between you and the form, which can be a very productive tension. I don't feel pressure to try nonfiction. I've written very little nonfiction, and it's been this kind of nonfiction that blurs the line with fiction. So it can be an opportunity, I think. If I don't do it, it's maybe because I don't think it's my strength to do it. Also because I'm a little cautious about nonfiction. I'm more interested in the project of literature in the way in which fiction functions across long periods of time, whereas nonfiction I don't think does. Nonfiction's relevance is not as much hinged on all the nonfiction that's ever been written, whereas fiction works with time in a way that I find much more interesting. I feel like when I write fiction, I'm not only talking to the past and that it's talking to me, I also feel like I'm talking to the future. And I don't mean that I expect my book will survive my life and be read, you know. You get embarrassed if such a thought even goes through your mind because it presumes so much. And but nonfiction, it's less interesting to me. When it's done well, it's good. The other way that I'm cautious around nonfiction is I think a lot of what's happening in nonfiction suggests anxiety with reality and anxiety with it suggests an anxiety with fiction. That we can't reach or say or see what we're trying to through fiction. We must use nonfiction. Nonfiction is more real. Nonfiction will tell us more of what we need now. And I think because of what I said earlier about needing to hear the voices of the past and the future, I don't want this anxiety, this project of anxiety to push me out of fiction, whereas I think fiction has so much relevance because of what it does that nonfiction doesn't do. So I want to stay in fiction because for me it's very alive and I want to keep it alive. If I feel pressure, it's not so much pressure to enter nonfiction as it is pressure to keep alive the ways in which in which fiction functions for us and has always functioned for us. I mean, the forms within fiction will change, the structures people use, the elements of fiction may change, but that fiction speaks across time is something that's so important to me. That I won't buy into this anxiety too quickly that fiction has failed us, we must use nonfiction. And that extends all the way to like sort of reality television and fake news, and there's this kind of trajectory on which nonfiction is moving now. Because anytime you create out of anxiety, you're just going to keep being pushed by the anxiety further and further out to this kind of unbelievable edge, you know, where we now have fake news. I mean, we couldn't believe the news, so we made unbelievable news, you know, and now we're much more secure not believing the unbelievable news and allowing it to be, because we would rather be correct, and I mean, we would rather be right than we would be anything else. So this feeling of like, I always knew, you know, pat myself on the back, that all this is fake, it doesn't work. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy to live with the ambiguities of fiction. Seems to me to invite a good and productive tension in human society.
In another recent article that I read by this poet and novelist Nabina Das, she said that she felt that the younger crop of women who write in English in India have not quite got the kind of attention that they should have. And I don't think that she blames so much the writers themselves or the ones who came before them, but institutions around writing which supports writers, say the academies or educational
the
institutions.
young women have not gotten attention. One would hope we don't blame them for it.
Yeah. No, I mean, not the young women, but even the ones who came before them, the ones who are, say, more established. So she meant neither, but the institutions around. Yeah. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I don't know about attention. I agree that this is an unequal workplace, and there are many workplaces now where certain behaviors are becoming untenable. Male colleagues behaving and poorly, harassing female colleagues, whereas in the world of writing, it still passes muster. These displays of hurtful, hateful masculinity is acceptable and celebrated in the world of writing. For example, you know, in the world of writing and in the profession of writing, as in any other profession, if you're a cardiologist or you're a writer, you're both workers and you have a profession, and you engage with certain setups in your work. So in writing, as in cardiology, probably a lot of the senior writers, the writers who convene the festivals or the committees from where awards are or fellowships are granted, or submissions are sifted through and selected, or invitations to submit, you know, are handed out. They're male. They're more often men, and I think people can, listening to this, accept that's true. That's true in most workplaces. And if you are in the world of writing, in the workplace of writing, you'll find that not only are men occupying these positions of power, but they're able to do things that I think in other professions are becoming sort of not allowed anymore. Granting favors, inviting a certain kind of relationship with a younger woman writer, so that the rest of us in the workspace are looking and thinking, wow, that feels horrible, so that's who I have to be to get this. So in that way, I think patriarchy, sexism, exclusion is gendered in the writing space that we share, men and women, in the writing world, on the festival circuit, on the awards committees, and so on. That's just a given in our profession. Because I'm in it, I feel like it's worse for us than it is for the cardiologist, but maybe the cardiologist will have something else to say. Maybe it's Yeah, maybe it's not comparable really in the sense who knows what oppression looks like somewhere else, but here it's pretty oppressive. I don't like it.
In the sense that there is no set of rules or I mean, any other profession would have, say, a set of norms that you have to follow.
Yes, because we tend not to look at this as a profession. I describe what I do as a job and as work, because this idea that because we're artists, we can get drunk, men, and sort of weave as we walk and then stumble and collapse against a colleague who's younger and weaker, and then say, oh, sorry. I haven't seen this once or twice or experienced it just myself. These are stories women writers share with one another, and I have seen it dozens and dozens and dozens of times now, and it's incredibly tiring. And as you keep seeing it, you keep wanting to not go to these places where men drink. You go to a festival and people say, let's go have a drink, and you're thinking, who in the room is going to be predatory tonight? Maybe I just go up to my room. And actually you get punished for not going also. And not because connections are made, not only because of that obvious thing that these are also places where professions are made and careers are made, but you also get punished because the predator in the room sees you saying no and punishes you for it.
That note, I'd like to end on something maybe brighter. Could you tell us something about the Dipalya Library Project, Community Library Project?
Okay, so for years I was reading to a small group of children at an NGO school in my neighborhood. I know a number of other writers who do similar things. I think we can't help it, like if we sit around waiting for someone to come ask us to read, And of course, I'm not reading, and I don't think they're reading from their work to small groups of children in NGO schools. We're reading because, in a way, we're reading our writing, because our writing is connected to all the other writing that's ever been. So I was reading picture books, really interesting ones. I would work hard at choosing good ones, and I was really enjoying the experience. And ended up starting a library for the school children in that school. When the school closed, asked the NGO, which is Dipalya, if they would allow me to take that library that we had created and turn it into a community library. And by community library, I mean something that we don't see much of in India. A free library. It shouldn't cost you anything. That is open to everyone. And when I say open to everyone, it means that I treat it more like a social change organization than a static library. It's a dynamic space from where we have to fulfill the mandate of it being open to all. We have to go outside the library and find the people and bring them in. And then we have to retain them, hold them, and watch them go through that transformation of becoming readers. They are, most of them, first-generation readers. So our library has, in the last 2 years since its founding, signed up about 1,400 people at this one location, out of which I would say at any given time about 800 of them are active members. They're using the library. Most weeks, somewhere in the range of 900 books, maybe upward to 1,000 books go out of the library on a weekly basis into the community and come back. We only have about 5,000-6,000 books, so at the end of the week, it's like kind of empty, and then it starts up again. We serve children ages 4 up to adults of all ages. It works because it's a volunteer-run organization. It's member-owned, so the members themselves are learning the skills so that they can operate the library, which is how they own the library. It works because we read to the children. So that little thing that I was doing for my own sort of pleasure actually is a crucial thing in transforming people into readers. Even if you're a 5th generation or a 120th generation reader, you still start out life as a reader with someone reading to you. That's what works with your baby at home if you're a middle-class person. And if you're 14 years old and you have not really read, you know how to read, you can decode words and make sounds and have it string together into a sentence, you're probably pretty good at going to work and reading a script and making a phone call or writing a letter of leave of absence to your manager when you need to leave. And because that's what your school has taught you reading is for. In the library, we say reading is for thinking. So when we read aloud, we're inviting people into a process of thinking, modeling our thinking to them, you know, in our surprise or our joy or our consternation in reading that story, which is you know, a joyful story or a confounding story, and the person listening sees how that's done, how you're thinking when you're reading, and how you're connecting the story to all these other things in your head, all these other books, all these things in your life, in your neighbor's life. And then they also share that these are the things they're thinking about, and that's what we do in the library. And it really works to make people into readers.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.